Signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Here we are, back on Stellarium. What we're going to do today is break down the entire sign of the marriage and betrothal. As I've said in previous videos, I believe that the entirety of Scripture can be found in the Mazzaroth. We can, if we look deep enough and we have the information, we can find all of these signs that are in the book of Daniel, in the book of Revelation, and in all of the prophecies in the sun, the moon, the stars, the constellations, and I have even found in the asteroids. And I'm sure it's in all other bodies within heaven. So what we're going to do today is we're going to break down what I have found with the marriage and the betrothal. So the first thing that we're looking at is an understanding of marriage from a scriptural, biblical point of view. And we have these types and shadows in the marriage of Jacob to Leah and Rachel. And what we have is a model of these two marriages that took place over a 14-year period. And then Jacob also worked an additional 6 years for his cattle. And what we see is a marriage typology of three individual periods of time that are taken for what was brought in. And you can look at that as a harvest. Jacob was reaping 2 wives and cattle. And we can see this same exact typology in the heavens. And what we find is some amazing connections that I do not believe anybody else has found. And this work was given to me. It is a very beautiful thing that has been dropped in my lap. And this is not my work. This is the work of the Spirit. These aren't things that I believe I could have found. These are things that were shown to me. So let's continue. What we're looking at is a 7-year period of marriage. That the bridegroom worked 7 years for the bride. And then he received his bride. Excuse the shaking. At the end of the 7 years, he would receive his bride. But for those of you who have watched my previous videos on the ancient Israelite wedding customs, you will know that that was not the entirety of the marriage. The marriage was performed and the rings exchanged, and then there was a 1-year betrothal period. And this betrothal period was where we find that the bridegroom went to prepare a place for he and his bride to be inside of the Father's house. Now, some of these customs seem strange to us today, but if you go back and you do your homework on these ancient marriage customs of the Israelites and the Jews, because these are two different groups. The Israelites and the Jews are different groups, and we must understand that. Israel is not Judah. So we have to understand what we're talking about with all the tribes, which there are actually 13 tribes. And we see that in the heavens now with the addition of Ophiuchus into our lineup of constellations. We see that depiction now with Ophiuchus taking over Scorpio. And that's shown to us in the heavens, that Scorpio would be stomped on or destroyed or conquered. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look to see if in the heavens, if there's something that shows us a sign for this marriage. And we're going to see if we can decipher what the heavens are speaking, to see if it is showing us where we are in time and space. And I believe that this is what would have had to have been done over a long period of time by the Magi in order to decipher what it was that they were seeing in the stars to get to Jerusalem at the exact time. And they would not have been able to accomplish what they were there to do unless they knew what they were looking at in the sun and the moon and the stars. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for this sign just as they did, which is the marriage sign. This is the bride, the sign of the bride. So here we go. We're in Stellarium, Jerusalem time. You can see down here in the bottom left corner, we're in Jerusalem time. And we are looking at 12:22 at the midnight hour, transitioning from the 21st into the 22nd. And we have a couple things that we need to point out that are very, very, very important for all of those who consider themselves the bride of Christ, the body of Messiah, those who are waiting and watching, the wise, the virgins who are waiting for their bridegroom. If you are waiting and you're watching and you're looking for the signs, this is for you. The Mayans had the greatest timekeeping calendar in all of history. And this is a well-known and well-documented thing. Many say that the Mayan calendar turned out to be a flop. But I'm here to tell you that they were exact in their timing. And nothing could have been more exact than what I'm about to show you. I do not believe that they were showing us the end of the world, but they were showing us the beginning of the new age. And these signs in the heavens, if you are a bride of Christ and you are waiting for your Messiah and you do know the Mazzaroth and you do understand what these constellations and these planets and these stars and the sun and the moon are speaking, then this is a great sign. And I wish I had this information 7 years ago like I do today. But it was delivered to me in this time for me to show the bride of Messiah at this point, because we are right at the door. So, here we are in Stellarium, focused on the sun. At the end of the day, on the 21st, what do we find? The sun is in the Golden Gate. And for those of you who have seen my previous videos on the hourglass cluster and on the Trifid Nebula, I broke down both of these and all of the codes that were associated with these two nebulas. And if you look from a scrolled back position, you will see that the sun on the 22nd, right at this time, the 21st, 22nd at midnight hour, the sun is directly in the middle of the Golden Gate, directly in the middle. And this was well known to the ancients. This is where the supposed sun worship came from. This is the Christmas story. This is where we get all of our ancient pagan customs for the birth and the death of the sun. We all know that are skilled in this about December 21st and December the 25th. On December the 21st, the sun goes into darkness, and it is reborn after 3 days and 3 nights in darkness. And it is reborn on the 25th. And this is why we have the ancient customs of sun worship. But Satan did not create the sun or the moon or the stars or anything. He was part of creation, but nothing was made through him. And so what we find is that these signs were meant for us. They were not meant for the enemy. These signs were meant for us. And what we see here is at the end of the age, we see the marriage sign. So we have the sun in the Golden Gate. And we have the messenger in the Hoopa. And for those of you who have watched my last couple videos that we were doing in Stellarium, you know what that means. And then we have Venus in the crab's claw. And this is a very significant sign. This is a harvest sign. Venus, the bright and morning star, is a sign of Messiah, but it can also, for those of you who have seen my previous videos, there's a dual nature to all of these things. And Venus can be looked at in a feminine, from a feminine perspective, as a bride or a female. And so what we're seeing here from that feminine perspective is Venus, or the bride of Messiah, because if Venus is a representation of the bright and morning star, and Messiah calls himself the bright and morning star, and we are the body of Messiah, then the bride is the body of Messiah. So the bride can be looked at as Venus also. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll back, and we're going to look at the position of the moon, because the moon is also the bride. So now we see the moon is in Pisces, and it's headed towards the northern fish. And only a couple, I believe it's only a couple hours. I think it's 3 hours. Yes. So within 4 hours of that alignment with the sun, the moon goes into the bands of Pisces with the northern fish. And this is also a harvest sign. And the bride, being the moon, is in harvest position on the 22nd. And so what we're seeing is a double bride sign associated with the church, or the body of Messiah, on the transition between the 21st and the 22nd. And we know that the bridegroom has to work 7 years. 7 years for the bride. So let's go back to the 0 hour, and let's transition for 7 years and see what we find. So here we are, year 1. There's year 2. And we'll go back in another video and we'll break all these down individually, because there's some amazing signs each one of these years. If you remember correctly, 2014, 2015 was 3.5 years in from 2012. The blood moons in 2015 were 3.5 years in, and they started in 2014. And all these signs, if you look at this timing over this period, I believe that we have our first 7 years. So we're going to go 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And what do we see 7 years after the initial sign of the bride? Here we are. Again, we're focused in on the moon. The moon is about to enter into Libra, the inner temple. She's already, I believe, on the 21st at, let's see, you can see here that the moon enters about the 1500 hour on the 21st, that the moon enters into the temple. Remember, Libra wasn't always scales. It was a mound or a temple or a altar. And the altar is always in the temple. So if we look at the Libra constellation as the temple and the inner sanctuary of Libra as the inner constellation, then the moon has now entered into the temple, and she is on her way to the inner sanctuary. And we also see in 2019 a couple other very, very important signs that, to me, last year at this time, were the greatest signs I had ever seen in my life, being a watchman skilled in Mazaroth. I believe that these signs were pointing us to the marriage and the great wedding feast. And when I saw this, especially as November was approaching, October, November was approaching, and we were getting all the last bits and pieces of the signs. For those of you who have ever seen Kurt Jurgens' senior channel, you can go back to October and November of 2019 and watch all of his videos. In that time period, he has not done a video in 3 or 4 months, but he was doing some great work deciphering the signs at that time, and we were all pitching in with our own information, breaking down these signs, and I believed that everything was culminating in the ark, and Kurt Jurgens believed that everything was culminating in the Huppah. And so let's break down these signs from 2019, and let's show you what we're looking at. So for those of you who have seen my previous videos, you know that the bow of Sagittarius is also looked at as an ark or a boat, an ark. This is the ark. And the reason that we can say that it's an ark, not only because of its shape, but also because of where it's located in the heavens. So if you look closely at the bottom of the ark, it is literally floating right on top of the Golden River, which is the Milky Way in heaven. And this is the area of the Golden Gate that has a lot of golden clouds. And if you scroll back on Stellarium, it really looks like a river in the heavens, and it looks like it's a golden river. So if you have Stellarium, do that, break it out, and look at it for yourself. You can see from this perspective that this river, travels through Aquila, and it comes down and it continues out. And it's very easy, it's very easy to see this river in the heavens. And this is shown to us for a purpose. And I believe that this ark in the bow of Sagittarius is where we have some very, very amazing signs. And here's why I say that. In these customs of the pagans with the sun, what we find is that on the 25th Okay, so here we are on the 25th. And we're going to scroll back. And what we're going to do is we're going to present to you the sign that I believed was the escape of the bride. But now, with the information I have, it's easy for me to understand why I made that mistake. So let's dig deeper into this sign. What we have here is the sun in the ark on the 25th. Every single year, if you go back and you look, the sun will be in the ark on the 25th of December every year. And I believe that this is done by our Creator purposefully. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the remainder of these signs, and we're going to look at this from the 0 hour on the